People with ASD may engage in conflict avoidance for several reasons, and here's the top 8. Number 1, difficulty with social communication. They might struggle to interpret social cues or understand social norms, making conflicts feel overwhelming or confusing. Number 2, sensitivity to sensory input. Most people on the autism spectrum have heightened sensitivities to sensory stimuli, and conflict situations can be stressful and produce overwhelming sensory experiences, leading them to avoid such confrontations. Number 3, need for predictability. Many people on the spectrum thrive on routine and predictability, and conflicts may introduce uncertainty and disruption, prompting them to steer clear of situations that could lead to conflict. 4, fear of negative outcomes. Past experiences with conflict may have led to negative consequences, causing people on the spectrum to anticipate failure or rejection, which can drive them to avoid confrontations. Number 5, struggles with emotion regulation. Managing emotions during a conflict can be particularly challenging. As a result, some people on the spectrum may avoid conflict entirely to prevent feelings of anxiety or distress. Number 6, desire for acceptance. A strong desire to be accepted and liked may lead people on the spectrum to avoid disagreements that they fear might alienate others. Number 7, low assertiveness skills. Some people on the spectrum may lack the skills to express their needs or opinions assertively, leading them to choose avoidance rather than to engage in potential conflict. And number 8, cognitive processing differences. People on the spectrum may process information differently, which can make navigating social interactions challenging, leading them to avoid situations that could result in conflict. All right, 9 conversation killers in your neurodiverse marriage. Number 1, criticism. In other words, constantly pointing out the other person's flaws. Number 2, defensiveness. In other words, responding to complaints with excuses or counterattacks. Number 3 is stonewalling. In other words, withdrawing from a conversation. Number 4, contempt. In other words, showing disdain or disrespect towards your partner. 5 is distraction. That's engaging in other activities like being on your phone, watching TV, or something like that while your partner's trying to talk to you. Number 6, avoiding difficult topics. In other words, skirting around important issues. Number 7, bringing up the past. So, rehashing old arguments or grievances instead of focusing on the current issues is definitely a communication killer. Number 8, passive aggressiveness. In other words, indirectly expressing anger or frustration. And lastly, number 9, interrupting, which is cutting your partner off while they're speaking. So there's 9 conversation killers in your neurodiverse marriage. Some of the traits that an autistic individual has to endure: mind blindness, alexithymia, executive function deficits, anxiety, weak central coherence, problems with prediction, problems with perspective taking, sensory issues, childhood trauma, being on the receiving end of disapproval most of his or her life, which means super low self-esteem. That was 10, and that was the short list. Quick message to neurotypical spouses out there. If you're married to a spouse on the autism spectrum and they seem to be very angry, short, snappy, defensive, and so on, what's going on behind the curtain is anxiety. So whenever you experience the wrath of an ASD spouse and they're being very verbally abusive, rude, inappropriate, and so on, I'm not saying excuse that behavior, but I'm saying view that behavior as driven by anxiety. That doesn't make it acceptable, but what you see is anger. What's going on behind the anger is huge anxiety. So the mantra that I want you to adopt is this: his or her anger is a dysfunctional way of coping with high anxiety. Okay? So anger is hidden anxiety. A quick message to people who think they might be on the autism spectrum, but they're too embarrassed to research it or consider it or admit that it's a possibility. just know that you're going to have more strengths than weaknesses. That's point number one. Point number two is you'll have some strengths that other neurotypicals will not have. I'm just going to make up an example. Let's say you're a 45-year-old man, okay, who suspects that he has ASD level 1. And if you were to go get assessed, you might find out, yes, indeed, I do have it. You will have some strengths and some abilities that a 45-year-old male neurotypical will not have. You're going to be great at thinking in pictures, very logically intelligent, great at systematizing, and that's the short list. So when I say there's more strengths than challenges, I mean that you're going to have some strengths that neurotypicals don't have. Okay, another question. What choices do NT wives have to get her emotional needs met if AS1 spouse can't or won't try? Please keep in mind there's this little thing called mind blindness and emotions blindness that comes with ASD level 1. And so it's not like he sees what you need, but just chooses to dismiss it. He doesn't see it to begin with. He's got some blind spots, and when you're blind, you can't see that you're blind. And if you can't see a problem in the marriage, it's as if the problem doesn't exist. And so if the problem doesn't exist, there's no motivation to work on something that doesn't exist. Now, how does the NT wife download that as? And why wouldn't she? He doesn't care. Insensitive, uncaring, narcissistic, pathological demand avoidance, etc. Hey, quick message to spouses on the autism spectrum. Here's a 5-step plan for calming down once you're triggered. Number 1, pause and breathe. Pause and breathe. As soon as you recognize that you're triggered, take a moment to pause. Focus on your breath. Inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 4. And exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. You're going to repeat this a few times to help ground yourself. Number 2, acknowledge your feelings. Allow yourself to recognize and name what you're feeling without judgment. It could be anger, sadness, fear, and so on. Acknowledging your emotion helps to validate them and can reduce the intensity of the trigger. Number 3, use distraction. Shift your focus by engaging in a quick activity that demands your attention. This could involve listening to music, going for a walk, doodling, practicing a musical instrument, short mindfulness exercise, and so on. So choose something that helps to redirect your mind. Redirect your mind. Number 4, reframe the situation. Reframe it. Challenge negative thoughts by reframing the situation. You're going to ask yourself if there's another perspective or a more positive way to view what triggered you. This helps you create distance from the triggering event and promotes a more constructive mindset. Number 5, establish a calming routine. A calming routine. Develop a personal routine that you can rely on during challenging moments. This could include journaling your thoughts, stretching, practicing gratitude, using essential oils, yoga, lifting weights, running, jogging, you name it. So having a predetermined routine can provide familiarity and comfort when you feel overwhelmed. There's your 5 steps. Do it. Just do it. Message to neurodiverse couples, especially those who may be experiencing Cassandra syndrome. Difficult emotions do not cause illness. Difficult emotions do not make you sick. What makes you sick is difficult emotions plus resistance to those emotions. Resistance would be intolerance and impatience. Intolerance is, I can't handle this difficult emotion. This is too painful. Impatience is, I wish this difficult emotion would hurry up and get over. It's lingering too long. No. When you remove impatience and intolerance, you've removed resistance. And when you remove resistance, you remove the possibility of you getting sick in some shape, form, or fashion from experiencing difficult emotions. Accept your emotions, write them out, have tolerance and patience for them, and you'll be fine. The 10 classic outcomes of an ASD spouse who feels criticized. Number 1, withdrawal. He's not going to want to talk about anything, especially problem solving with the relationship difficulties. He's going to get defensive. He's going to engage in counter-criticism. He's going to engage in adult temper tantrums due to his frustration level. He's going to be dismissive. In other words, he's going to refuse to acknowledge any validity to your criticism. He may become very passive-aggressive, especially if he doesn't feel like he has any control in the relationship. He'll come through the back door and have sneaky ways to try to reestablish control. There's going to be avoidance. You're going to want to discuss something with him, and he'll be late working at the office. Resentment is going to be another huge one. He's going to refuse to compromise, and he might seek validation elsewhere. In other words, he's going to look for some moral support and validation from coworkers or other family members. Oh, another question from an angry NT wife, I'm assuming. My husband never apologizes. He's never wrong, you see. He has never said he's sorry about anything, ever. Well, there's this little thing called mind blindness, where you don't realize how your behavior is impacting others. I'm not saying it's right. It's not right that he's not apologizing, but it's not like he sees what he did wrong and then just chooses to go, the heck with it. If it hurts you, so what? He doesn't see it to begin with. Your ASD husband has a huge blind spot. It's called mind blindness, sometimes referred to as theory of mind deficit. And so in this case, he has a hard time peeling himself out of his skin, crawling into your skin, looking out of your eyeballs and seeing the world as you see it. In this case, seeing how such and such behavior coming from him negatively impacted you. So again, he doesn't see it and then just chooses to not give it. He doesn't see it to begin with. Again, that doesn't make it right. It does make him blind. Okay, let's have the brief conversation about interruptions. And when I say interruption, that's a neutral term. It's not good, bad, right, wrong, fair, unfair. It's just is what it is. So the NT, we'll make it in the context of the NT wife and the ASD husband. She views interruptions in a very positive sense most of the time. She can be busy doing something, and then she gets interrupted, and she goes, oh, great. An opportunity for some give and take in conversation or some kind of connection. So interruptions to her are mostly good, mostly good. If you have somebody on the autism spectrum, we'll put it in the context of an ASD husband, he views interruptions in a negative sense most of the time. He views interruptions as intrusive. So on the one hand, you have the NT wife that can appreciate interruptions, great opportunity to have conversation, to connect. And then he goes, well, this is intrusive. I was in the middle of doing this and now you're disturbing me. So to the NT wives, I would say, when you go to interrupt him, not that that's a negative thing, you may want to see if he's busy doing something else. And I understand some things are emergent and need to be tended to now, and if he doesn't like the interruption, that's just tough shit. But the other 98% of the times, maybe check and see if he's busy doing something instead of interrupting, and he's going to download that as being intrusive. Just say, hey, when you're done doing whatever you're doing, let me know. I want to mention something to you, or I got something I want to run past you, or I need to tell you something, blah, 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 whatever. Now, to the ASD husbands out there, when your NT wife interrupts you, try not to view that as, oh, here she is bothering me again. I was busy doing this, and I have trouble shifting focus from this thing over to what she wants me to do or what she wants me to listen to. Instead of viewing it like that, view it as, okay, this is her way of wanting to have a moment of connection. So, to the NT wife again, in summary, don't view his unwillingness to connect as he doesn't care about you. Just please try to view it as interruptions. Download to him as intrusiveness. And then to the ASD husband, instead of viewing your NT wife as being intrusive and bothering you, view her interruptions, again, that's a neutral term, as, oh, she wants to take a moment to connect. So in those moments, you're not doing brain surgery. You're not on a flight to Mars. Stop what you're doing. Give her a few moments of give and take in conversation. Give her some connection time right there. You've got 24 hours in a day. Question Is it possible to be autistic and also have Cassandra syndrome if your partner is also autistic? Absolutely. It doesn't matter whether you're autistic or not. The only thing that matters is you're in a relationship with a significant other. And in this relationship, since you are a social creature by nature, you're expecting and hoping for and need emotional reciprocity, affection, connection. And when you don't get that for years and years and years on end, you don't get one of your primary needs met. It's a safety need. It's a human need. It's not a want or desire. It's great if it happens, but if it doesn't happen, I'm okay. No, if you don't get emotional connection with some other human being, it's as bad for your mental health as not having any water would be bad for your physical health. So it's definitely possible. And so if you're not getting validation, give and take in conversation, sharing, physical touch, and so on, then, and this has gone on for 10, 20 years, then that is definitely Cassandra syndrome right there, is being on the receiving end of emotional deprivation to the point where you're losing your sanity and you're losing your sense of self, and it's affecting your mental health, it's affecting your physical health. What I run into most often with, especially ladies with Cassandra syndrome, is autoimmune disease. So you're a social creature by nature. You have to have connection with others, especially your significant other. If that doesn't happen, it makes us as human beings sick. Message to husbands on the autism spectrum. How do you know if your wife's suffering from Cassandra syndrome or not? First of all, she's very judgmental. In other words, she is saying things to you like, whoa, you should have done this. Well, you shouldn't have done it. Well, you ought to do it. And I'm not faulting the Cassandra syndrome sufferer as I'm describing this to you ASD husbands out there. Another sign is that she's involved deeply in analysis, trying to figure you out, trying to figure the situation out. What were you thinking when you da-da-da? How come you always blah, 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 blah? Or what were you trying to accomplish with da-da-da-da-da? So over-analysis. The third one would be resentment, where she is angry and she's telling you so. You download this as she's always complaining, she's always negative, nothing you say or do is ever good enough, doesn't matter how hard you try, you can never meet her expectations. You want to make her happy, but you can't, and she tells you so. She views you as a disappointment, and she verbalizes that. So, there you go. And I'm not faulting her. This is her experience. She views herself as a victim. I'm not saying she's not a victim. She's viewing you as a perpetrator. I'm not saying you're a perpetrator. But if you're experiencing what I just described there, then you're with a wife who is now fully engulfed in Cassandra syndrome. Quick message to neurodiverse couples out there. Avoid JAR. Avoid JAR, J-A-R. That's judgment, analysis, and resistance. Judgment is, well, he shouldn't be doing that, or she should be doing this instead. And analysis is, why does he always do that? Or why doesn't she? And resistance is when you charge in there with an angry, dictatorial mandate how the other person is supposed to change their behavior. So when you avoid judgment, analysis, and resistance, you have by default chosen peace instead of conflict. Are you in a neurodiverse marriage where one person is autistic and the other one is not? And have you been struggling for years and years, if not decades, and you're at your wit's end? Actually, you're beyond your wit's end? Then maybe schedule a Zoom call with me. There's going to be a link in the description area below this video. The link will also be pinned in the comments section, and you can pick the available dates and times that work for you, and we will meet up and come up with some intervention strategies to help. I'll look forward to hearing from you. Quick message to neurotypical wives. You have been fired as a manager by your ASD husband. Your heart was in the right place. Not minimizing that at all. But it's likely that he viewed your help as micromanagement, being controlling, parental, critical, and so on. And so unbeknownst to you, at a subconscious level for him, he fired you as the manager. But you could be rehired as a consultant. A consultant doesn't reach out to you, you reach out to him or her. Consultant doesn't go, oh, hey, by the way, here's what I need you to do today, or here's how you need to work on such and such today. No, he or she is on standby. You contact them and go, hey, I need your feedback on such and such, or I need advice about so-and-so. So a consultant is on standby and is there to offer suggestions, advice, and so on. So your management skills work wonderfully for the children, not so much for an adult, especially an adult ASD male. So, sorry, but you've been fired as the manager. You can be rehired as a consultant, but you can't mix the roles. You can't be sometimes a manager and sometimes a consultant. That's going to be a conflict of interest that will backfire. So, there you go. Quick message to neurotypical wives. If you have a husband on the autism spectrum and he's busy doing something over there, in other words, he's got his attention on that thing, whatever it is, and then you come in and you interrupt him because you have something you want to say, and then it appears as if he's disinterested in what you're saying and has no interest in paying attention, it's because he has a shifting focus deficit. His mind was on that thing. He's not a cognitive multitasker like you are. And so it might be best to go, hey, whenever you're free or whenever you're done doing what you're doing over there, let me know. I got something I need to talk to you about. Much better method. Hey, quick message to neurotypical wives out there. If you have a husband on the autism spectrum, then you have a husband who's going to have some mind blindness issues. And so you will want to communicate with him very explicitly. In other words, instead of relying on hints or implied meanings, you're going to want to be direct about your thoughts and feelings. For example, if you're feeling neglected, rather than saying, I feel alone sometimes, and expecting him to know what he's supposed to do based on how you feel, no, it would be better to say, you know what, I would really appreciate it if we could spend some time together this weekend. Maybe we could go to the park and walk the dogs and maybe have a little picnic on one of the picnic tables over there. Very specific, very concrete, very detailed. You're going to paint a picture for the guy. This is what I would like to do. We're at the park, we're walking the dog, we take our lunch, we sit down at that table and we eat. Okay? He's a visual learner in the verbal world. So this clarity not only improves comprehension on his part, but it also conveys your emotional needs. Hey guys, this is Mark. I have a special message to all the ASD Level 1 husbands out there. I have a men's masterclass that starts next week. We're going to meet for 1 hour a week for 6 weeks. It's all instructional. And in that group, you will learn some social skills and some emotional literacy in the context of your neurodiverse marriage. Neurodiverse marriage meaning he is ASD, she is neurotypical. Has your wife complained that you don't meet her emotional needs? That you're insensitive, uncaring, selfish, narcissistic? That work's more important to you than she is? And you know how it goes, right? Okay, well, it doesn't need to be this way. You can learn how to deal with your neurotypical wife. She has a good message. Sometimes that message gets lost because it gets delivered on the heels of her anger and disappointment. But she does have a good message. And the message is, please reconnect with me, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. The link will be in the description area where you can sign up. I'm also going to pin it in the comment section, and I'm going to put a link to another video right here where you can get more information. I hope to see you in the men's masterclass. Starts next week. Hey, quick message to neurotypical wives. If you're trying to talk to your ASD spouse and he is standing there looking disinterested with flat affect like a deer staring into headlights, it's because he feels like a prisoner that's forced to listen to a lecture. Sorry. Quick message to neurotypical wives. Do you often have the thought, I'm not sure my ASD husband even loves me. I don't really think he cares about me. I think work's more important than I am. Seems very selfish, uncaring, and insensitive and narcissistic. So if you've had thoughts along those lines, then let me ask you this question. Does he do things for you? I said, does he do things for you? You know, completing certain tasks. Not so much being with you, although you'd like that too, but doing things for you. Most NT wives would say, yeah, he does things for me. Okay, well, this is an important note to make. That's how he shows his love. Doing things for you, even if that is working and making money to pay the bills. That's just one of many things. If you think about it, you will realize that there's a lot of things that he does for you. And I want you to remember, please, that that is how he shows his love. Some NT wives, well, that's not enough. Well, okay, I'll be praying for you. In too many cases, when working with the NT plus ASD spouse, I find that the ASD spouse is often overly logical and an overthinker and just tries conflict resolution strategies purely from logic and reasoning with very little emotional content involved. But on the other end of the spectrum, which is just as problematic, the NT wife, when she's trying to engage in problem solving, she comes at it purely, or mostly purely, from an emotional standpoint. So he's 98% logical, trying to solve the thing. She's 98% emotional, trying to solve the thing. And so you can see why there is two people never on the same page. Hey, quick message to neurotypical spouses out there. 7 reasons why your autistic spouse is hypersensitive to criticism. Number 1, fear of rejection. Many people on the autism spectrum harbor a profound fear of being rejected or abandoned, which can stem from previous experiences in relationships or social interactions. And this fear can lead to heightened sensitivity to criticism, as any negative feedback is perceived as a potential threat. Number 2, low self-esteem. And I have not met one person on the autism spectrum that does not have low self-esteem. So, those struggling with low self-esteem often have a fragile self-concept and may view themselves negatively. So when faced with criticism, they may interpret it as a confirmation of their insecurities, internalizing it as proof of their perceived inadequacies. Number 3, past trauma. And I have never met one person on the autism spectrum that hasn't had some degree of past trauma. So people who have endured trauma or significant emotional pain in the past, such as bullying or abusive relationships, may carry the scars of those experiences into their current interactions, and as a result, criticism can evoke feelings of vulnerability and defensiveness. Okay? Number 4, perfectionism. I have not met one person on the autism spectrum who doesn't have some degree of perfectionism. So perfectionists set unrealistically high standards for themselves and are often intensely driven by the desire to succeed. As a result, they may experience extreme distress when they perceive even the slightest critique, viewing it as a direct indictment of their worth and capabilities. Number 5, anxiety. I have not met one person on the autism spectrum that doesn't suffer from some degree of anxiety. So people suffering from anxiety frequently maintain a heightened awareness of social dynamics and potential threats. And this heightened sensitivity can lead them to obsessively monitor any signs of criticism, interpreting even neutral comments as negative feedback, exacerbating their anxiety. Number 6, lack of emotional resilience. And I have not met one person on the autism spectrum who doesn't have some problem with emotional resilience. So some people may not have had an opportunity to develop effective coping strategies for dealing with criticism. And so without these tools, they may react impulsively and defensively to feedback. And number 7, over-identification with self-image. When people tie their self-worth directly to their accomplishments or feedback from others, any criticism can feel like a profound threat to their identity. So there you go. 7 reasons why your autistic spouse is hypersensitive to criticism. Women on the autism spectrum often navigate complex and nuanced relationships with their close family members, which can sometimes be characterized by a hot and cold dynamic. On one hand, they often experience deep emotional connections and a strong desire for closeness with family, finding comfort in shared experiences and support, and this can lead to warm, loving interactions where they feel understood and accepted for who they are. Now, on the other hand, misunderstandings, unmet expectations, or sensory overload can create tension and feelings of frustration. And this can result in withdrawing or expressing anger, leading to cooler interactions. As a result, family members might struggle to grasp the unique needs and social cues of, in this case, the wife or mom with ASD, which can exacerbate these fluctuations between hot and cold. Research into the relationship between childhood trauma and autism is still evolving, but several key points need to be made here. First of all, people with autism may be more vulnerable to experiencing trauma. Their social communication challenges can lead to difficulties in expressing feelings or seeking help, which leaves them at a higher risk for various adverse experiences. Also, childhood trauma can exacerbate the challenges faced by adults with autism. Traumatic experiences can lead to increased anxiety, depression, and behavioral issues, complicating the already intricate landscape of autism. And lastly, both trauma and autism can manifest in behaviors that may be misinterpreted. For example, withdrawal, aggression, heightened sensory sensitivities, and so on can arise from trauma and may overlap with the symptoms associated with autism. One of the main reasons that a neurodiverse couple, where one is autistic, the other one is not, has such great difficulty resolving a relationship conflict is because the ASD spouse will try to problem solve largely through the lens of logic, factoring in just a little bit of emotional content, whereas the neurotypical spouse will try to problem solve largely through the emotional lens with a little bit of logic factored in. So we have a huge disparity with 2 different sets of lenses trying to tackle the same problem. And so that's why both parties are very infrequently on the same page. You know, the number one thing that has to be in place for your neurodiverse marriage to function, the absolute number one thing that has to be in place is a sense of safety. If people don't feel safe in the marriage, all bets are off. Safety is a primary human need. We could say the same thing about animals. And if that need is not met, nothing else matters much. Spouse might say, well, I just wish we had more give and take in conversation. Or I just wish we had deep emotional connection. Or I just wish we had some quality time. You'll never get there if people don't feel safe in the relationship. Safety is number one, and that primary need has to be met. Otherwise, nothing else matters much. So you can ask yourself, how can I make my spouse feel safe in this relationship? What can I do or say that provides them a sense of safety? What can I avoid saying or doing that would help facilitate their feelings of safety? So that's the question. Find the answer, implement. And if safety is not there, trust is gone, bond is gone, quality time is gone, conversations are gone, trying to problem solve relationship difficulties gone. Safety, number one. Strength through adversity is a powerful phrase that reminds us that we can become stronger and more resilient in the face of challenges and obstacles. When we're faced with difficult situations or difficult relationships, it can be easy to feel defeated and overwhelmed. But by persevering and maintaining a positive mindset, we can emerge from adversity even stronger than before. So please remember that setbacks and struggles are a natural part of life, and by facing them head on, we can learn important lessons and develop the strength and resilience to handle whatever comes our way. You've developed emotional muscles in your neurodiverse marriage that you never would have developed otherwise. Wives are very good at managing the family, right? They've got the mom brain. Where would we be without moms? But unfortunately, if you're a neurotypical wife married to a husband with ASD, he's going to view potentially your management as micromanagement. And it's not going to go over well because he is very independent, autonomous, self-reliant, pretty much a solo player. And he's going to view your management as micromanagement and an invasion of privacy. So be careful. If feelings of resentment aren't addressed and processed, eventually they will fester over time, leading to deeper emotional turmoil. So people might express resentment in indirect ways, such as through passive-aggressive behavior, sarcasm, withdrawal, etc., which can further complicate relationships and create a cycle of negativity. And prolonged resentment can also have physical repercussions, as stress and unresolved emotions can manifest in symptoms like headaches, fatigue, digestive issues, fibromyalgia, and other autoimmune disease. Resentment is not your friend. Resentment hurts you, not so much the other person. A quick message to neurodiverse couples out there who are trying to make sense of the autistic spouse's distancing. It all starts with alexithymia. The ASD husband misinterprets his neurotypical wife's feelings due to emotions blindness. As a result, she starts to believe that her feelings are not being acknowledged and that her emotions are unimportant, and she tells him so. As a result, he starts to feel very inadequate. He gets a deep sense of helplessness and negative self-perception because he knows he's not measuring up in the emotions department. And so he starts to distance himself. He starts to separate. Now, as a result of that, the NT wife feels very disturbed by this emotional distancing, and she tells him so. And as a result, he starts to feel very anxious about how his responses will be interpreted. He views that sometimes she is his number one source of anxiety, that he's always in trouble. He fears that even a minor misunderstanding could lead to a significant rift, which makes him retreat even further. And so now the NT wife starts to feel rejection, abandonment. She interprets his withdrawal as apathy, that he doesn't care, which causes a bunch of resentment, and she tells him so. And so now he distances himself even more because his anxiety is even higher. If you have a husband on the autism spectrum, he is going to be a slow processor in the emotional sense. So when you talk to him about how you feel, and he's standing there speechless and looks dumbfounded, it's not that he doesn't care or that he's not listening. It's just that in the emotional sense, it's going to take him a little while to process what you said. He's going to have to think about it and figure it out. So give him some time to digest your good message, okay? So it's not narcissism, it's not selfishness, it's not dismissiveness, all the other things you want to label. He's just going to process this at a very slow pace, painfully slow, compared to how fast you can process emotional stuff. When you harbor negative thoughts about your spouse, you run a very high risk of setting up a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, your spouse is going to end up behaving the very way that you dread. So if I have negative thoughts about my spouse, I'm going to have negative feelings, anger, resentment, bitterness, and so on, which is going to influence what I say and how I behave. It's going to affect my attitude. And then I'm going to respond or react or behave in a way that elicits the very behavior out of my spouse that I accuse them of having. And then I go, see, I knew they were the problem when I set the thing in motion with my negative thoughts. So be careful with your thoughts. They're powerful, and they set up a cascade of events that you're going to regret. That's guaranteed. Quick message to spouses that are struggling in their neurodiverse relationship where one person is autistic, the other one is not. You know, you've heard the saying, well, if you don't have anything nice to say nothing. Okay, well, I would like to stretch that a little further because your thoughts can be just as impactful and toxic as your words. So if you don't have anything nice to think about your spouse, then think nothing. Because as soon as you start thinking negatively, pretty soon you're going to start speaking negatively. A lot of times they lie, especially about things sometimes things they didn't even need to lie about, because they either don't want to be interrogated, and they know if they say the truth, they're going to be on the witness stand,
Or they lie not because they necessarily feel like they're doing anything wrong. They probably feel like they're not doing anything wrong, and they want to keep the peace. Why do I feel the need to lie? Is it because I'm trying to avoid conflict, or I don't think this is wrong and I'm tired of explaining to my wife that it's not wrong, or if I tell the truth, I'm going to get bombarded with 50 questions about it. So you need first of all look at your motivation as to why you're lying. Now we want to look at, since we know your motivation, we want to do a cost benefits analysis on telling the truth. This is one of those deals where I'm going to manufacture something that's not totally honest. If I do this, there's going to be costs and benefits, both. It's not going to be 0 on one end and 100% on the other, and it's going to be a mixed bag. Well, the benefits of me either lying by omission or lying by kind of distorting the facts, are the advantages going to outweigh the disadvantages? And I'm not going to make a judgment call on it. I'm not going to stand in judgment and say, well, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. No, that's not going to be me. So this is your ethics and your morals, and I'm not going to judge them. And so if you feel that the cost is going to be way higher than the benefit, you may want to just go ahead and be honest and face the music up front, which will be way less painful than what you described in your question. The only way that they can get down to a 2 or lower perhaps on the anxiety scale is if this conversation is structured and has some rules, and that she plays by the rules. That's why I want her to watch this video. I'm not faulting your wife or accusing her of anything, but here's what happens that makes, in this case, the husband, the ASD level 1, high-functioning husband, not want to have conversations. She does it spur of the moment. Sometimes, I'm not accusing any of the NT wives in here of doing that, those that are watching this video. A lot of times they will interrupt when he's busy doing something else. So it's surprise, I want to have a talk, I want to have the talk, and he had no idea this was coming. So he gets blindsided. She goes on too long, 30, 60, 90 minutes. Some guys report 3 hours. Okay. She's very intuitive, and so she's very socially and emotionally smart, and she assumes that her ASD level 1 husband is at the same level with her in the social and emotional sense. He is not. So he downloads some of her intuitive female brain emotionese talk as very vague and doesn't quite get it. A lot of times she will want to talk when she's already mad instead of postponing the conversation until she's calmed down. A lot of times she will talk in terms of feelings. Well, I feel this way about such and such. And then she expects you to know what you're supposed to do based on how she feels. A lot of times she will throw up the past, unfixable past, that there's no way you can do anything about that now. And she will start out on one topic. By the time she gets done with your ass, she's on topic 10. And you got lost way back there at topic 1. A lot of times I will point that out to the NT wives. And she goes, no, it wasn't 3 different topics. It was the same thing. Not to him. To the NT wives in here, you're 1A, 1B, and 1C. To him is 3 different things. So that's what happens when he says, yeah, I'd almost rather take a bullet to the foot than talk to her about this shit. So we have to play by some rules.
If you are in a neurodiverse marriage where one spouse is autistic and the other one is not, and you've been struggling for years and years, and you're kind of sick and tired of the routine, talk to me. Use me as your personal coach. I have groups, and I keep these groups small so that you can get a lot of one-on-one attention. I have 3 Q&A groups, 1 for ASD husbands, 1 for neurotypical wives, and I have a couples group where both spouses can attend. I also have 2 instructional groups, Cassandra Syndrome Recovery Group, to help you cultivate some strategies to recover from years of emotional deprivation, and the Men's Masterclass, in which we take a deep dive on developing social skills and emotional literacy in the context of the neurodiverse marriage. We meet 1 hour a week for 4 weeks. These are face-to-face Skype calls, So how much longer are you willing to wait? The links are below in the description area, and also they're pinned in the comments section.